Headspaces, we back at it again. VJ, the brother from the ancient mother.
Ta-Kaizer Viwe means.
Yeah,
I thought I was but
you know,
load shedding.
such is life. Yeah. We live with these things, but it's good to have you on the couch again, Ta-Kaizer. I'm sure the subscribers feel the same way. It's another topic, and I think we had to address this because number one, it angered both me and you. We spoke about this off the record.
Yeah, off the record.
And it angered like some rappers.
Yeah.
I think you told me spoke about it on Twitter.
Yeah. My ego was my ego looking uti. The funny thing is, y'all thinking this SA hip hop would have existed without my E and Dugza being part of it, being part of the first generation that made this genre fashionable. Emakasi. Wow, the disrespect. They don't call me my Easy Does It for nothing. Fede Sabaganda Namanje.
They don't call me my Easy Does It for nothing. I like that one. Die hard. But what are we talking about? We're talking about the list that recently made waves. The
20 worst SA
20
rappers.
worst SA rappers of all time.
Imagine.
Of all time. Now, I don't have a problem with lists. I love lists, especially when it comes to hip hop.
Yeah.
Because lists get us talking.
Yeah.
Point in case. But the thing about lists that often grinds me is the fact that a lot of people make lists without understanding their own criteria.
Willy-nilly.
Go on. Like what I mean by that is you'll have somebody say, yo man, my top 5 MCs are so and so and so and so. And yet they haven't asked themselves what are the standards they use to measure greatness, you know? So I think the one thing that I'm hoping we can kind of engage with our subscribers is know your criteria, guys. Know the standards you measure and qualify your favorite artists according to, because number one, these standards differ, okay, you know? And because these standards differ, when lists are compared, when I say the best MC in South Africa is Pro Kid, and somebody says no, the best MC in South Africa is AKA, more than us debating about who's better, we need to ask ourselves, are we using the same measuring rod?
Yeah.
And I think fundamentally what the Headspace did, which opened up a dialogue and I think made the discourse easier to do, is the fact that we created
our own 5 principles.
The 5 principles.
Yeah.
The 5 principles, for those that don't know, were coined and conceptualized as a way to emerge with the fundamental principles that apply to each and every artist when it comes to the metrics of hip-hop excellence as a rapper.
Yeah.
Because we can't deny the fact that hip-hop culture has the context that applies to its own rules, but it's also part of pop culture. Yeah, well, so you can't run away from that. So as a result, there are questions of, does an MC have to be well known to be recognized as great? And undoubtedly, mass appeal matters. That's why it was part of our, our 5 principles. There's the question of, does an MC have to be known by every generation? And consistency matters. Because it's not easy to do this thing for 5, 6, 7, going into 10 years. So I think what sets apart every rapper from the greats is the fact that great rappers are able to tap into certain elements that allow them to move with the generation. They're able to learn from the people, and they're able to take that into consideration in how they produce their art. So when this list came through, what annoyed me was I just couldn't understand the worst. Worst how? Are we talking worst from a technical perspective? Are these rappers, the person who made the list feels can't rap.
Can't rap.
And if these are people who they feel can't rap, how do you measure somebody who can't rap? Because in one of our episodes, I famously said anybody can rap.
Anybody can rap.
You just have to have the confidence. You have to have the belief in self, and you have to have a unique story about you.
Yeah.
And if you have those things, technicality aside, you appeal to people. You appeal to some people. There's somebody out there who's going to appreciate the story you have because it mirrors theirs. So I think before we even talk about who the most skilled rappers are, rapping as an art form isn't an elitist art.
Yes.
It's rhyming, you know?
It's rhyming.
And so at the core of it, it's about having fun. And I think if anybody has a basic level understanding of language, any language, your language, you are able to make some rhymes in it. And if you enjoy hip-hop, you're able to do that in a way where you just have fun with yourself. So we also need to get out of this mindset as hip-hop heads that somebody needs to be extra poetic and complex and layered in order to be considered a good rapper. Good rapping is just rhyming and having fun.
In fact, rap is only prescribed for certain people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It's a private club.
You know what I mean?
Only so and so can enter. If you can, there's these nuances of saying, I know. If you can't freestyle, you're not a real rapper. Shit like that. Yeah, boys, come on, man.
Come on. Everybody is a real rapper if they love rapping. That's just what it's about. At the core of it, it's about appreciating the art form enough to try it out. And if you can string together some fun rhymes that make you feel good about yourself, you're rapping.
You're rapping.
And being good at it is just about enjoying it. Now, obviously, people are going to say, oh, well, VJ, there's levels to this. And I agree. There are levels to this. Just like in any other art form, we're able to look at a Picasso and we're able to look at a Rembrandt and we're able to look at an Ayanda Mabulu painting and see the excellence in the technique. The fact that there's detail, there's a deep understanding of texture, of tone. So even in hip-hop, at the fundamental, anybody can rap, but from that there are people who rap extremely well.
Extremely well. Yeah.
Where it's not the average, you know. It's not just rap that's good to listen to and fun, but it's rap that now goes into an element of being extremely focused in a particular direction. That direction can be rap that's really good at composing lyrics that make great songs, you know, because songwriting is an art form.
It's an art form, yeah.
Is an art form. You know what I mean?
You can be a good rapper and be a terrible
songwriter. Yeah. So that's the thing, is if a song resonates with most people, that is an incredible skill, because you've understood the rhythm, pattern and melody in a way that the average person doesn't, and that is a skill. So rapping fundamentally is an art form that anybody can do, but when you work at it and you work at it in a particular kind of element, you go into a direction that's of your desire. There are rappers who desire to take their rapping to a level where they can create songs that become moments for everybody to enjoy and relate to. There are rappers who want to focus more on how rap as a living, breathing, poetic art form can become more and more advanced in its poetry. Yes. There are rappers who are trying to bend the rules and the structure of how we speak, and if we're really honest, hip-hop and rap really is what permeates into the pop culture scope and gives people most of the slang terms.
Yeah.
Because now we know what capping is from this diaspora connection that we hear from hip hop that comes from the Americas. So hip hop is powerful in that way, that it transmits language, style, culture. So the power in being a rapper is that you introduce people to different ways of speaking that explore language on a deeper and increasingly more exciting level. So going back to this list, if you're going to talk about worst rappers, the first thing you need to do is define what worst is. And in the
worst, Jesus.
You know what I mean? So let's go into that actual list. I think it's gonna be important for us to talk about some of these names. We have like what?
It's 20 of them.
That's extensive.
Yeah. El Tito is number 1.
El Tito is somebody who's been important enough in the rap game to fraternize with AKA and to be a part of this generation that helped hip-hop in the township particularly go into a direction where the archetype of glamour was very attractive. I think
Glitterati.
The Glitterati.
Yeah,
remember,
part of Glitterati.
or El Tito, or Morale, you know, Sean Pages too, who's also
in this list.
On this list. I think what this list feels like is a list that comes from a place of purist, lyrical bias.
Yes.
You know, this is somebody who clearly appreciates their raps with complex entendres, with linguistic devices. And so if you're gonna use the standard that you prefer to measure every rapper, it's not going to work, because not all rappers are trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like I said,
if every rapper was being being complex and it would be boring.
This is why this is one of the things that makes rap so exciting, is that it's gone into so many directions. It's gone into so many styles that if you're trying to crunch every rapper into one box, it's not going to work. You have to compare oranges with oranges.
Yeah.
You don't compare apples with oranges. Even though they're both fruit, they're not the same thing. So even in rap, the DNA of rappers is diverse and is really something to be appreciated. The fact that we have an El Tito who can give us the simplicity and the minimalism of glamour and the aspirational swag, the fact that we have an Ifani who can make humorous songs that relate from to adults to little children.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that
to
sing along songs, the fact that, you know, because a lot of MCs, you know, and rap purists alike will diss on rappers who kind of have these nursery rhyme approach. I respect that. I respect a rapper whose simplicity is likable and charismatic enough to pull a greater market. Because the thing we don't get is that those kind of rappers are often the ones that open the doors for people to go deeper into the kinds of rap that exist. So
these heads who like to talk about the extra complex rappers, they forget that when they started listening to hip hop, they heard it on radio, which was a radio friendly song that made them, and then after that you thought, okay, let me dig deeper, or someone told you, look, it's I know. So we started there. So these rappers are important because they open doors, like what you say.
They open doors. Recently, Big Zulu was trending.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk about the fact that Big Zulu is not a lyricist.
Yeah.
Of course, he knows that. But he loves hip-hop, rap, and the art form enough that that diss track was really a moment to honor all of those MCs as his peers, and to say we're all playing in this one game and competition cultivates it. Yeah. So the one thing about creating lists is that we're gonna have to understand that from our own bias, there has to come a point where we understand that there are rappers who transcend certain niches and are big enough to relate to most people.
Yeah.
And those rappers who float within the pop scope are actually very valuable to the culture at large, because what they do is that they become introductory steps for people to step into hip hop in general and deeper into hip hop culture. So before MCs and purists want to create lists that denigrate rappers who are about simple songwriting and a general mass relationship, really look at what you're doing, because these things feed into each other, and the hypocrisy in not being able to see the importance of an Altido, of an Ifani, of a Sean Pages,
or a Reason,
of a Nomuzi Mabena, of a Boyti, who probably don't even write their lyrics.
Yeah.
But what they do is that, number one, the presence of women is important. They themselves have fun with it.
Yeah.
They use rap as a way, yes, to make money, but also it creates a conversation around the fact that, does rapping in the context of club culture, in the context of the sexual gaze and men are seeing women as objects of desire, it creates the conversation that leads us deeper into a goddessa, that leads us deeper into a Sky Wonder, that leads us deeper into Entabi. So if the Boities and the Nomuzi Mabenas aren't there, it's an imbalance, you know, I feel, because the diversity is what creates the engagement, because everybody feels entitled to what they love, you know.
Yeah.
And if they do that with passion, that's all good, but they need to understand, again, the criteria that they use is not general. It's unique and particular to their tastes. So again, if you're gonna create a list, you're going to have to open your mind up to the fact that there are different kinds of rap, and if there are different kinds of rap, there are different standards. So if you're gonna, say, create a worst rappers list, how would you even quantify that?
Yeah.
Are you saying the worst sales? Are you saying the worst songwriters? Because that would be more tangible, you know?
Yeah.
Are you saying the worst lyricists?
Yes, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then we're able to we're able to understand. We're judging them according to their ability to be poetic and complex and layered, if it's a worst lyricist list. If it's a worst sales list, then we're judging them into their ability to write songs.
Like the one they do, is it MTV?
Yeah.
The hottest rappers.
The hottest.
We know those ones are the ones that are making money.
That generate pop culture attention. I ain't mad at that list.
So people like to get to fret over that list, the hottest. They're like, why? And they always want the lyricist to be on that list. But it says the hottest.
The hottest, and what hot means is the most pop culture relevant rappers. So pop culture factors in with market, with sales, and with just general relatability to trend. So the MTV hottest rappers list is a list about rappers who are the most prominent in the pop culture at the moment. So again, if you're going to create a list, know yourself, know what that list entails, and define it more specifically, because just saying
Douglas,
you know,
in fact, Douglas is a pioneer, bruh.
You know what I'm saying?
Imagine.
Come on. You might not like Tippy Toes, but you can't deny that it had the clubs popping. You might not
in the early 2000s,
you know what I'm saying?
when nobody even thought about making smash hits, the hip hop. Everyone was being lyrical at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might not like Josie, but we can't deny that they had the club
attitude.
had an impact, a cultural impact. So how is the list the worst? You know what I mean? So again, I think whoever did this list should have specified worst in what category, worst in what way. And I really want to talk to our subscribers and anybody who's watching, the fact that if you're going to create a list, know the standard. Be specific about what you're using to measure. Because again, we got names like
Zulu Boy.
Come on.
Jesus.
Come on.
We even had to do the
Hail to the Kings?
Hail to the King.
One of the most important singles in our time. Because what Zulu Boy did is he created the conversation around language and culture and being proud of where you come from in an indigenous context. So again, how is
is
Zulu
that
Boy
worse?
the worst? Plus, Zulu Boy can spit with the best of them. He's worked his way in the Durban underground to become one of the most respected MCs. Ask Zakwe, ask Duncan, ask the Durban hip-hop fraternity about Zulu Boy and the impact that he has made, not only to shine a light on Durban rap, but to also be an MC who paid his dues.
Yeah, he paid his dues.
Who paid his dues from the ciphers to the stages. Who else do we have on this list? A1 Wolf.
A1 Wolf. Oh yeah.
We can't deny the fact that he had an appeal to pop culture that was relevant enough for him to become a fixture in many ways. Yeah, he didn't really have a breakout song.
No, he didn't.
You know, he didn't really have the kind of mass appeal that an AKA would have. But I don't think we understand how challenging it is to be in that space and to compete.
Yeah.
And to remain there.
And most of the guys, most of the lyricists, or you could say the rappers, that this person who made this list is probably more inclined to say they are the best. Probably never go to a stage where they had even the mass appeal.
Exactly.
You see?
Exactly. So I'm just gonna mention some of these names for anybody who didn't see the list. We've got people like Smashes. We've got My E who wilded out on it. Witness the Funk. God, they had hits for days back in their times. Nadia Nakai,
Gigi
Lamaine, Flame, Lucas Raps. It's insane how everyone on this list has a pivotal and important impact that they played in their own way. And I think what lists like this do is that they bring us backwards because they don't acknowledge artists who've done great work in understanding themselves and what niche they are about. So I just want to conclude, let's go out of this list and let's actually reflect on the fact that a lot of people say art isn't competitive. You can't categorize the best and the worst art because art is personal expression. So you can't have lists. You can't have a greatest painter. You can't have a greatest what because people believe heart comes from the heart. So I want us to conclude by saying, can we make art competitive and therefore have is? So, very important question. Art isn't sport.
Yeah, art isn't sport.
Art is about personal expression, whereas sport is about points. Artists don't make art for points. They make art because they want to ease their soul, they want to express what's happening in their lives, and they want to share that with the demographic of people who it identifies with. So are lists relevant in art? Because clearly we can have a best footballer of all time because it's measured by the games, the points, the tournaments won. But can we do that with art? Coming into rap, can we do that with rap? Should we do that with rap? Should we have any lists at all? Whether it's your greatest of all time lyricist, whether it's your greatest of all time in general in terms of pop culture appeal and everything, whether it's the worst like this one. Are lists even relevant? I know what I think. I want to know what you think today.
Yeah, man, John. It was a list. Thing with lists, similar to sport. When it comes to art, you could say the industry people created the plagues, let's say, for music. So if that for artists' sake, that's points. Bro. And also awards for artists, that's also points. So in the grand scheme of things, when you talk about lists, I think you can have lists, but should be categorized and have their own, like you said, with criteria. I think a list, I'm cool with lists.
Right.
I'm cool with this. Because that's the thing, man. You always gonna have to say, I'm the best. I'm the best. I make hits because I had a number one. I had 4 number one songs in my career. And when I was in the number one, they won.
You know?
That's points for me.
That's points. And I think what that does is that it introduces the important conversation of how did you do that? You know, how does one get a number one? So that we can start to understand the science, the thinking, and the mechanism behind how these achievements can
be made,
can be done. Here's what I feel about this. Life is something that manifests itself in a way where we're not all given the same quality and in the same amount. You know, whether be it strength, diligence, focus, mathematical inclination, artistic insight, people differ.
Yeah.
And what makes life so interesting is that people differ. Looks, height, weight. And what this does is that it creates a context where if we're trying to engage with each other, we're going to use what we're good at to excel.
Yeah.
So a strong person is going to emphasize their brute force. An intelligent person, linguistically, is going to emphasize their ability to speak.
Yeah.
Somebody who's mathematical is going to emphasize their ability to be strategic. And those qualities are going to shine through, and we're going to appreciate them. And what it's going to do is a mathematical person will inspire other people who are mathematical to step their game up.
Yes.
You know, and surpass that person. That's how evolution happens. A strong person is going to compete with other strong people to develop what strength is and is becoming. So the value of competition is that it breeds evolution and growth. So when we talk about hip-hop and rap, competition has been a natural part of how hip-hop has evolved as a culture. If it wasn't for DJs battling it out, we wouldn't have the art form of scratching develop in the ways that it did. Because one would listen and try to outdo the other one by fading it out and, you know, coming up with different kinds of scratches. If it wasn't for MCs competing with each other in the party, you know, rapping wouldn't have evolved to something so poetic and complex and diverse. So competition is healthy in that way. Lists remind us of who's doing the best in what at that moment, inspiring those who feel that they could do better. They want to pursue that, to understand what's the best quality at the moment and how to surpass that, and what are the principles that make the excellence in that context. So again, lists are a healthy way of kind of keeping score of the best of what we have, you know, and the best of what we have in a particular context. So bringing it back to rap, bringing it back to hip-hop, we have greatness among us in many categories, in many facets, in many ways. So if you are a rapper, if you are a DJ, if you are a graph writer, there's something about you that is great, that nobody can mimic. And I think if you tap into that, you become a force to be reckoned with, because then you can develop yourself and focus on what your strong qualities are. So it's a question of identity. If you're trying to be a lyricist, work at that. But at the very same time, if you're also trying to improve the songwriting, acknowledge that. You know, that there are better songwriters than you who you could learn from. And it's important to understand the dynamics that filter into that. So what this list does is that it just gives us names, but it doesn't highlight how these people can be disqualified. And so what I want us to do is actually take a moment to say all the people on that list were actually important enough for this person to denigrate. So the irony is, you create a worst rappers list from people who have created so much notable work that they'd be recognized by most people who you showed the list to. So isn't that in a way showing how those people are best at what they do so much that you're able to put them together into a list that's recognizable to most people?
To most people.
So that's the funny part about this list, is that everybody on that list is on a level where the mass appeal, where the consistency that they've put in is so widespread and known that you can create a worst list using the most recognizable names. So the last thing I'll say about this list is that it's the worst list I've ever seen somebody in hip-hop do. So how do I measure that? It didn't identify what its criteria is about. And number two, it doesn't understand that the irony of all of those names are that they've worked so effectively to make their names known that you can even use them as part of a list. So shout out to everybody on that list, including my E, for being so well known that people can hate on you. That's kind of that's the beautiful irony in this list. And I think
that's the positive.
That's the positive of it. That's the positive. So I think every MC who was mentioned on that list, if they haven't already seen it like that, should, because there are so many unknown rappers who didn't make that list, and yet they did. So the fact
makes me think if this same person were to write a list, the same list, but on the best rappers, probably half of them people would ask, hey, Ngubani lo?
Who's that?
Who's that?
You know what I mean?
So now we have to go deeper and go by making this list of the worst.
That's exactly it. So I think what's going to develop us as hip-hop heads is understanding our personal criterias, and when coming into any debate, understanding how those criterias affect the way that we judge rappers, graph writers, whatever measuring rod and list we're debating at the time, because hip-hop debates tend to kind of turn into bitter, commotions that don't really emerge with an all-encompassing value. And I think what's going to help that is enlightening and making people understand, not making, but just inspiring them to understand that their personal biases don't equate to the greatest thing ever. And understanding what you like is going to be an important part of understanding what you don't like. So in moving forward, as hip-hop heads, competition is healthy, and everybody working right now is doing something great in a particular way. So let's acknowledge the greatness in everybody, and when we make lists, let's be specific about what facet of greatness we are addressing, because we're all goats in our own unique way, and because of that we can all compete with other people who do things we aspire to do, which makes it all fun at the end of the day. It's been VJ, the brother from the ancient mother.
Ta-Kaizer. Get us in the comment section.
Please do. What do you think about lists? Do you think they're relevant? Do you think art needs them? Do you think rap needs them? Do you think this list was proper? Do you think it was nonsense? Do you agree with us? Don't you agree with us? Is Headspace the greatest South African hip-hop podcast at the moment? Because I'd say we number one in that top 5.
Yeah, in terms of content creation.
Everything. In terms of everything.
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 Okay, subscribe. Peace.